Hello, I'm making this video for the people of Britain. I don't care what ethnicity you are or culture or what political party you're affiliated with. This information is for you because the next election we will be voting either for God or the devil. That's what it amounts to. The devil's law of might equals right, rapist law, strong and powerful can do what they like, and those who are weak will have to do as they're told, put up and shut up. Or God's law, right equals might. We live by a system of human rights, international law, common law. That's God's law. Okay? Right equals might. Are you right? Do you respect other people's rights? Have you got emotional intelligence? Are you able to empathise? Do you live with compassion? All of the things that apparently the psychopathic, narcissist, fascists that are governing this planet right now judge as weak. Because they can't a psychopath can't match our passion. Narcissists have no passion for any but themselves and their own. Even amongst themselves, they're always warring and vying for higher positions. So it's very important that when people are asked to make a choice, that they make an informed choice and they don't make it on hateful rhetoric and xenophobic fears. As in Brexit, where we were told 1 million Muslims from Turkey were going to invade Britain and the NHS was going to get £350 million a week. Total lies. And you can guarantee that whatever these people are offering to their followers on the bottom, whatever they're giving, they will be taking away 10 times more. So I'm going to start with this little clip extract as was shown on Secular Talk, the Kulinski show, who's absolutely great. I'll leave you all the links to everything I'm showing here. And please do check his show out. And also his wife, Crystal, who's also a professional journalist and does her own shows. So we'll start with this. It's this government war film warning about fascism is disturbingly relevant today.
I happen to know the facts. Now, friends, I'm just an average American. But I'm an American. And some of the things I see in this country of ours make my blood boil. I see Negroes holding jobs that belong to me and you. Now I ask you, if we allow this thing to go on, what's going to become of us real Americans?
I've heard this kind of talk before, but I never expected to hear it in America.
This fellow seems to know what he's talking about.
What are we real Americans going to do about it? You'll find it right here in this little pamphlet. The truth about Negroes and foreigners. The truth about the Catholic Church.
Do you believe in that kind of talk?
I don't know. Makes pretty good sense to me.
And I tell you, friends, we'll never be able to call this country our own until it's a country without. Without what? Yeah, without what? Without Negroes. Without alien foreigners. Without Catholics. Without Freemasons. You know these things.
What's wrong with the Masons? I'm a Mason. Hey, that fellow's talking about me.
And that makes a difference, doesn't it?
These are your enemies. These are the people who are trying to take over our country. Now you know them. You know what they stand for. And it's up to you and me to fight them. Fight them and destroy them before they destroy us.
Don't Be a Sucker was made by the U.S. War Department during World War II.
Before he said Masons, you were ready to agree with him.
Well, yes, but he was talking about... What about those other people?
But in this country, we have no other people. We are American people.
What about you? You aren't American, right?
I was born in Hungary, but now I am an American citizen. And I have seen what this kind of talk can do. I saw it in Berlin. I was a professor at the university. I heard the same words we have heard today. But I was a fool then. I thought Nazis were crazy people, stupid fanatics. But unfortunately, it was not so. You see, they knew that they were not strong enough to conquer a unified country. So they split Germany into small groups. They used prejudice as a practical weapon to cripple the nation. Of course, that was not easy to do. They had to work hard to do it. You see, we human beings are not born with prejudices. Always they are made for us. Made by someone who wants something. Remember that when you hear this kind of talk. Somebody is going to get something out of it. And it isn't going to be you.
We must judge each man as an individual, and not by the color of his skin, or his eyes, or by the length of his nose. And remember that there is no master race. That is a scientific truth. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying.
So, that's basically what the people after World War II knew. And they said never again. No more indiscriminate bombing, no more collective punishment, no more wars like this. That's it. Never again. So they established international law and human rights. And here we have Richard Murphy here is an absolutely brilliant guy. He should be Chancellor of the Exchequer. What he doesn't know about the British economy and finance isn't worth knowing. And I strongly advise you to check his videos out. There's a link to one of them here. And through this you can get onto his YouTube channel. And he's made some absolutely excellent videos casting light on the mystification, breaking through the mystery of how our economy works. So, he's explaining here what Farage's British Bill of Rights really means. And, he wants to cut international oversight in Strasbourg, which is where the European Court of Human Rights stands. And he wants to give Parliament, not independent courts, control over rights. And this will undermine UK's peace agreements between the government of Northern Ireland and international treaties, the Good Friday Agreement. So, the Human Rights Act is a law passed in 1998, and it brings into law the European Convention on Human Rights that was created in 1952. And it was based on an initiative by Winston Churchill, and it has nothing to do with the European Union. And it was in fact based upon the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights passed in 1948. Again, heavily driven by the UK, which was intended to put in place the rights that everybody should have to protect them from the tyrannies of government, which had been witnessed so recently at that time in Europe and way beyond, when far-right fascist governments had abused their populations. So, if you just excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough, coldy thing at the moment, so... The Human Rights Act is to protect everyone in the UK from abuse. There are no exceptions. No exceptions. So we have a right to liberty, fair trial, free speech and assembly. We're protected from torture, discrimination, surveillance and abuse. We have the right to meet with other people. And those rights are extended to every citizen, every person living here, every person arriving here, even if they're on holiday. To migrants, to prisoners, because all of us are human. The government remains sovereign, but its powers and its power to abuse is checked by the courts. So Nigel Farage wants to get rid of that with his British Bill of Rights, which was put together in a Tory back room, first proposed by David Cameron, now passed down to the latest Zionist rent boy, in the form of Nigel Farage. But he doesn't want to just cut links to Strasbourg, he wants to end international oversight too. He wants to make the UK government supreme, therefore meaning that if he were Prime Minister, we would be utterly dependent on his whim. Okay. I mean, you can guarantee that this British Bill of Rights is going to be, have you got any money? The more money you have, the more rights you'll have. But there are some very dangerous caveats to this whole thing. So he said that he needs to remove human rights in order to stop immigrants coming into Britain. So in practice, we are in control of migration into the UK. Over 900,000 people arrived in Britain in 2024. Of those, under 50,000 came in small boats. So the vast majority were invited, had a visa and a legal entitlement the moment they stepped off a plane or a boat in the UK. But, as usual, strain at the gnat in order to swallow a camel. And we need always to remember that in life, we will always end up swallowing a few gnats. And we won't get harmed by them. But a camel, no, a camel will kill us. So, if we go further down, what are the consequences if Farage succeeds? Quite fundamentally, rights would no longer be guaranteed for everyone in the UK. Now you might think, well, so what? He's only talking about people who've arrived here illegally, but that isn't true. Okay? Let's be clear, and this is really important. Under rulings made by courts in recent years, as a consequence of legal actions brought by the Home Office, anybody who has an entitlement to a second passport in the UK can be expelled from this country, because there is another country to which they could be sent. Now, this arose with regard to one of the young women who went to Syria at age 15 and wishes to return. And she's been denied that right because she apparently has an entitlement to a Belgian passport. But the point is that precedent would mean that anybody with a right to a second passport in the UK could, under the rules that Farage is proposing, be deemed to be a person who is not entitled to British human rights. And some people in reform have talked about people until the third generation of migrants into the UK has been reached, not being allowed to even stand for public office in the UK because they have not shown their commitment to this country until that point in time. This is really dangerous stuff. If you have a grandparent who was not born in the UK, this new British Bill of Rights will probably take away your right to protection, to citizenship. It's that serious. And what I mean as a consequence is that the government's power to consider whether you have an entitlement to live here is going to be massively expanded. So that means how many people in this how many people in this country have a grandparent that was born in another country? It isn't just migrants that are going to be impacted. And we've also then got, like I say, the threat in Northern Ireland. There is a huge threat to the problems in Northern Ireland being, well, a resurgence of it. This change will make the preservation of peace in Northern Ireland almost impossible, because that is based upon the UN Declaration of Human Rights and the European Convention on Human Rights. So, once they're gone. And don't forget, the latest Zionist rent boy, okay, supporting Israel, complaining that British people don't like Israel anymore, that's committing a genocide. And you look at Southern Ireland and its new president, who's standing directly against Israel, well, they'll jump at the chance, won't they, to actually declare war against Southern Ireland, ultimately, and conquer the whole of Ireland. It could happen. Because when you are voting for the devil, for the devil's law, might equals right, expect anything. And as bad as you think it could get, it can be worse than you would ever imagine. Because they do want to take us back to the 1700s, but with 21st century technology. They want us to take us to corporate feudalism, corporate communism. You will own nothing and be happy. And believe you me, you won't own anything. So, who is Nigel Farage then? Who will we be voting for? Well, here we go. Listen to this.
The Hunting Act.
I think it's monstrous.
Are you pro-hunt yourself?
I'm pro freedom of choice.
Really? Even if it involves animal abuse?
I can. Well, I wouldn't like animal abuse.
Yeah.
No. Of course not. But I honestly, well,
God,
point number one: foxes need controlling.
Yeah.
But I take a libertarian point of view. Mm-hmm. If people want to pursue those activities, it's not for government.
Yeah. Even if so, like, let's say that, like, dog fighting, right? Would you be okay with dog fighting?
No, I don't think fox hunting's cruel.
You don't think it's cruel?
No.
Do you think dog hunting is cruel?
I think shooting foxes is cruel.
So,
Really? You think shooting foxes is worse?
Much
keep
crueler.
filming.
Do you know why? Do you know why? Because if you go lamping,
Yeah.
right? If you've got an estate,
Yeah.
you know, and you want to,
So, he doesn't think fox hunting is cruel, but shooting a fox is. And did you notice that he totally evaded the question as to whether or not he supports dogfighting? Twice! He just totally brushed that aside to talk about foxes, because to him, you know, fox hunting is a sport. And he's obviously got a sadistic streak. He enjoys the chase of the fox, and he enjoys, he has regularly joined illegal hunting with hounds. And he obviously enjoys watching a fox being ripped apart by hounds. So, is that the kind of person that you want in power? Because if he's going to remove human rights, you can guarantee all animal rights will be gone. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he brings in some law saying, which, you know, Starmer's already trying to do, that if you have a pet, you've got to have a licence for it. And you can guarantee the licences will be astronomical. And a lot of people won't be able to afford them. So they'll be having what? Police banging through their doors to seize their illegal pets. I mean, it's happening now with certain breeds of dogs. Police are literally breaking into homes to take people's dogs off them and put them down. Some of them get shot. That has happened. That has been happening in Britain. So imagine if that went for all pets. Or you've got the option to go and get your pet euthanised. You have to think about these things. Animal rights activists, will they be considered terrorists? In the same way that people committing criminal damage to stop a genocide have now been judged terrorists by Keir Starmer. Well, I tell you, he's one step far lower than Keir Starmer when it comes to fascism. But Keir Starmer, another Zionist rent boy, just like Rishi Sunak and David Cameron, I am a Zionist. Boris Johnson, I am a Zionist. They're all Zionists. That's why there's nobody to choose between anybody. Labour is now a right-wing party. I mean, you've got the Tories. The Tory Conservative Party pledges 1.6 billion ICE-style removals force to deport 150,000 illegal immigrants a year. This is part of the Conservative Party's broad new plans to stop illegal immigrants. Okay? So you can imagine there will be some Tories get into power in the next election. And, yeah, if Reform wins and Nigel Farage is PM, as is predicted according to the polls right now, then, yeah, you'll welcome this, won't he? That'll get passed through for sure. You know, because we can't wait, can we, to have ice on our streets and towns and cities. We can't wait. I mean, in America, it's the Proud Boys that have been put in uniform and given guns and power to attack brown and black-skinned people, mostly brown-skinned people. And so who'll be having the guns and the power to do that in Britain? Well, of course it will be Tommy Robinson and his gang of merry men, won't it? From being the loons, crazy people that we thought, you know, never took them seriously, they'll suddenly be taken very seriously, won't they, when they're marauding our towns and cities and invading schools and just about anywhere you can go, grabbing child, look, raids on schools and childcare centres, arbitrary arrests and detention, people removed and never seen again, a lot of them. The families can't find where they are. That is what we're opening ourselves up to, you see, because there's no human rights. Apparently these people haven't got human rights. Donald Trump's removing the right to be born as a citizen in America if you're the child of illegal immigrants or even just immigrants. So, Nigel Farage, he wants to turn Britain's health service into a US-style private insurance health system. That's when he was with, was that when he was with UKIP? This was from 2014. But he's been talking, he's repeatedly said this, that he wants our health model system to be the same as America's, which is the worst in the world. People pay the highest prices ever for medications. Was it $150 a month for an inhaler? Thousands of dollars for insulin injections. People have died because they couldn't afford their insulin injection. And then you've got his view on women. You know, you read through this. Well, this was when he was UKIP leader, I think. He says, asked if women should play football, Farage replied, here's the bigger question. Do we think, chaps, when we're there in the front line, when the balloon goes up with fixed bayonets, when the whistle's about to blow to go over to the top, do we actually want to be there with women beside us? Do we? What an extraordinarily bizarre idea. I certainly don't think so. And then when it comes to maternity leave, here we go. Farage was also reported to have agreed with comments made by the then UKIP MEP Godfrey Bloom about maternity leave. Godfrey's comments that no employer with a brain in the right place would employ a young, single, free woman has been proved so right, Farage said. With this lunacy, that if you have children you get 3 months paid leave off work or 6 months paid leave off work. He's absolutely got it spot on. Well, this is the man who's predicted to be the next Prime Minister. Talk to any of his supporters. Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister. It's a meme. That's what's going round. It's like, yeah, we're sticking a finger up to the establishment. When he is the establishment, he's working for Zionists. Because Zionists don't like human rights. for any but other Zionists. They don't like international law. They want to be free to commit a genocide and expand their land into part of Syria, the whole of Lebanon, part of Iran, part of Turkey even, part of Saudi Arabia they want as well. So, Nigel Farage, we've got him here talking about Muslims. Okay, if I can find it. I think it's here. Farage against Muslims. He's made numerous controversial statements about Muslims and Islam throughout his career, often linking them to issues of immigration, integration and security. Apparently, a growing number, according to Farage, of Muslims in the UK do not subscribe to British values and loathe much of what the country stands for. Well, I think there's quite a lot of people loathe much of what Britain stands for right now when it is standing by terrorism. A nation that murders children, that targets them, shoots toddlers through the head and heart, evacuates with military force a hospital with all its patients and leaves the babies in incubators to die and be eaten by dogs. Right? Is that British values? I mean, I wrote a letter to my MP about Zionism. I asked, can you explain how Zionism merges with British law in terms of equality, human and child rights, democracy, civil rights, etc.? According to my research, Zionism is fundamentally against all concept of human rights for any but Zionist-affiliated Jews. It is a supremacist-based ideology, though the word dogma more accurately defines Zionism, as it is entirely unreasonable and lawless in achieving its objectives. Okay? I mean, Zionism does not like socialist Jews. So, is that British values? So anyway, let's just have a look now at a few facts, shall we? Let's do a bit of number crunching to see about whether Muslims are integrated into Britain. Because as far as I can see, they are integrated into Britain. They're being born here, they're getting married here, they're having their families here, they're opening up businesses here, they're working in the NHS, they're working as lawyers, doctors, you name it. That is integration. To suggest that they're not integrated because they follow their Muslim faith and continue to follow their culture, celebrate their holy days and wear their cultural dress. That's their right, that's their human right. As British citizens, we all have a right to express our faith and to celebrate our cultural holy days or continue to live by our own customs within the framework of human rights and international law. Because that's the whole idea of right equals might. You're free to do as you please as long as you're living within the framework of human rights, common and international law. So here's a few facts. In World War I, approximately 5 million personnel from the United Kingdom served in that war, and about 700,000 to 880,000 died. In World War II, about 5.9 million personnel from the UK served, and around 384,000 military personnel died. Okay? So here we have Muslims. At least 2.5 million Muslim soldiers and labourers fought with the Allied forces in World War I, and 5.5 million in World War II. Nearly 1.5 million killed in action is also cited in the context of the total Muslim contribution to both wars. You still think Muslims have got no right to be here? They fought for this country. They were part of the British Commonwealth. They worked for this country. They fought for this country. And they died for this country. You think they're not part of British culture? Of course they are. How many Africans? 2.2 million. And in the First World War, and 1.1 million fought in World War II. And then we go up here now to the Caribbean. So I've not done how many Caribbean soldiers served in World War II. I think this is far more interesting in the sense of it's just the air crew, RAF air crew during World War II from the Caribbean. So you can imagine, when you look at the numbers here, you can imagine how many more were actually serving in the regular army. So we've got Antigua, Bahamas, Barbados, Bermuda, British Guyana, British Honduras, Belize, Cuba, Dominica, Grenada, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, St. Kitts, Montserrat, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Trinidad. These were all RAF crew. And then you've got uncategorised and unknown countries of origin, but all from the Caribbean. Okay? You think that Caribbean people shouldn't be here? You think they're not part of British culture? They fought, they died. Many of them serving in the RAF did actually receive medals for their bravery. Still think that they shouldn't be here? And this is what I mean. Why don't you know about these facts? Why aren't we focusing on that? Why instead is the BBC constantly going on about people in small boats? You know, let's have a look at how many people arrived here in small boats. In 2024, there was 37,000 arrivals. In 2025, there were 43,309. So have a look at this. These are just the people arriving on work visas. Work visas that corporations, any business can get a sponsorship license and they can bring as many people as they want from abroad. Okay? To do jobs that apparently British people can't do because the government's not investing in British people. Because they can bring everybody they need from abroad. And in the corporate free ports and special economic zones that are 21st century style enclosures of British land, they don't even have to operate within the jurisdiction of British law. They can pay the workers what they like, okay, and bring them from wherever. And these free ports and special economic zones, they don't even have to pay taxes. At the moment, they're surrounded by imaginary borders. How long before they're physical borders and we all need to show our citizen's ID card and be searched before we enter? How long before Britain looks like Palestine? With checkpoints all over the place. We need to be asking ourselves these questions because we can't just take it for granted that it'll never get that bad when you voting a man into office who wants to take away your human rights. You will be reduced to being an animal, a serf on the corporate farms. you know, yes, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And then we've got Nigel Farage, what he thinks of kids, you know, 18 to 20-year-olds. Apparently, though, it should be cut. The minimum wage for young people should be cut. It's £10 an hour at the moment. He says it'll raise aspiration and boost business. Well, obviously for the employers. But there's a method behind this madness, I think. There's a method behind this madness. Because he wants to cut... Why does he want to cut wages for young people? Well, his hero, Donald Trump, has now said that 14-year-olds should be going to work. If the parents can't afford to send them to college, then they should start work at the age of 14. And I think in some states, like Texas, they've already adopted it. So Nigel Farage definitely, I believe, of course, is going to emulate his hero, Donald Trump. And I think that he will be saying that 14-year-olds should be entering the workforce. So can you imagine your 14-year-old daughter or your 14-year-old son being forced to go to work for what, £5 an hour? Can their safety be guaranteed? Working among adults in a world where they've got no human rights and not even any workers' rights, and possibly doing menial jobs in free ports and special economic zones where even what minimum British law there will be to protect any citizen of Britain won't even apply. You need to think about these things. You need to think about your workers' rights. You need to think about your maternity leave women and women's rights. Because, you know, according to Nigel Farage, women shouldn't even be joining the military. Okay? I don't know why that's up twice. So, and then we've got Nigel Farage, again, wanting to emulate Trump. He thinks that we should send prisoners overseas to complete their sentences, including to El Salvador. So he wants to empty out the prisons and send them all, outsource that overseas. Not immigrants, but anybody in prison. You know, he thinks they're dynamic. Farage's right-wing party, which is leading the government in the polls, promised dynamic prison places abroad, with the British government renting cells in third countries. Apparently, we'd all be pleased if that means child murderer Ian Huntley goes to El Salvador. Our attitude is, so be it. Well, suppose that the people that they'll be dubbing as terrorists are animal rights activists. Women standing up for their rights. People standing up for human rights. Anybody judged left. Trump is already declaring war on them. Imagine ICE-style units going around Muslim communities, just dragging people out of their homes because, oh, you're no longer a British citizen now. You've only got one grandmother born in Britain, or you haven't got any grandparents born in Britain. You're out. Off you go. Don't think that could happen. It actually will happen. It is really happening now in America. And I tell you, Farage and his extremists among his supporters are literally drooling for it to happen. They can't wait to get the jobs. Dragging the people out. Taking children and women. So then we've got, like we look at the extremist Muslims that Nigel Farage relies on to demonise the overwhelmingly moderate Muslims of Britain. You know, the Muslims that you see handing out food at Christmas to the homeless people, that are there through winter offering food for homeless people, getting together as a Muslim community to do that. I don't see any Zionists doing that. You know, MI6 built Syria's extremist police. Because Britain, this idea that we have a government that we've elected, we haven't. We've got Zionists. Zionists are running our government. Zionism is what's in control. And I'm just going to show you this clip, which is from Al Jazeera, the Israel lobby. It was an undercover 4-part investigation into how they operate. And their undercover guy has befriended this guy called Shai from the Israeli embassy. And this is the kind of thing that they set up in Britain. This is a new group called the City Friends of Israel. Okay? And they have somebody from AIPAC there to talk to the group. And AIPAC's guests explained to Robin their interest in Britain. And remember, this was made 8 years ago.
Interest in Britain.
The real strategic goal is to get the UK to behave more like the US than Europe when it comes to Israel. And kind of pull them, target into the US sphere.
Yeah, see? They wanted to get Britain to be more like the US than Europe. Let's see if we can get the thing. To behave more like the US. Well, where are we today? They've succeeded, haven't they? We're out of Europe, and here we are, ready to elect a man who's basically a mirror of Donald Trump. And for sure will do his best to go one step further, to outshine him, because that's what they're like. These psychopathic narcissists. So we need to look at this, because I think that, you know, what I'm going to share here is a microcosm as to what our country will be like under a fascist government headed by Nigel Farage, okay, or any, you know, leader of similar ilk. So this is the Islington Survivors Network, and it's about, you know, this is from people that as children were placed in one of Islington's 42 children's homes. And these children's homes were largely run by male managers. And it seems that those positions did attract really horrible, sadistic type men. And it is known that children were regularly removed from these homes and trafficked around Britain for abuse. Probably to people like Edward Heath. Police investigated Edward Heath, ex-Prime Minister, alleged Sir Edward Heath. And at the end of their investigations, up and down the country to various survivors, a lot of them who'd been trafficked to Heath, who were in care. They called him the Claw, because apparently he liked to wear a claw when he was abusing the children, because he was a sadist. And Wiltshire's police at the end of the investigation said they're 120% sure that Edward Heath was a paedophile. Well, you can go through, I'll leave you the link. It's absolutely terrible what these children suffered in these homes, and especially at Gisborne. But if we come down here, there's one paragraph which really just about sums up as a microcosm of what Britain will be under fascism. The senior management team Both used physical force as the routine method of discipline at Gisborne House. I witnessed children being frequently dragged along corridors, restrained with what seemed excessive force, and thrown heavily to the ground or against walls. This atmosphere of threatened violence permeated the entire place, and my job ended up being one of protecting the intermediates from the two adolescent groups who targeted these children as the lowest in the pecking order. Female staff had great difficulty in keeping control since the control culture was based on physical dominance by the male management. I often felt fearful whilst working at Gisborne. I reported the assaults and nothing was done. Former staff. Well, this is what you've got. Male management, senior male management. The women working as trainees and underlings. In an atmosphere of threatened violence that permeated the entire place. That'll be our country, our whole country. And a pecking order. Okay? So, as above, so below. I'm getting picked on by him, so I'm going to pick on you, because I'm bigger and stronger than you. Might equals right, devil's law. That's what you get. No rights for children. And that a man, these men could dominate and run these homes. And of course, there is a great suspicion that the people that were in those places, they were allowing children to be abused and were inviting abusers in. Cyril Smith used to visit. I recognised him. ISN survivor. Rolf Harris used to visit us sometimes. ISN survivor. One former staff says she saw the manager with a girl on his knee and described sexual behaviour that he was doing. And she said, this is ridiculous. She's a child. He said the children were starved of affection and this was his justification for doing what he was doing. Well, I tell you, it'll be rife. Because the more sadistic people are, the more they enjoy hurting children. Okay? And there was one story here from a young girl, aged 7 she was, when she went into Gisborne House. And on her first night in care, I had a terrible beating. I was in the dormitory and the bed next to me caught fire. I woke to a noise of a fire alarm and we were all dragged out of the dorm. The children were taken into the hallway. I was taken into the bathroom on my own and severely beaten by the manager, worse than anything I'd ever experienced. Age 7. Now, what kind of man takes a child who's done nothing wrong except been woken up in the middle of the night and gives her, on her first night in care, a severe beating? Because he enjoyed it. And you need to understand that mentality. You need to understand it is real and it does get itself into power. It gets itself managing a children's home and free to batter a child because that gives him a kick. Right? And it'll give a kick to, as it gives a kick to all those ICE agents in America who are going round, grabbing hold of immigrants. Anybody with brown skin. I can't even find it now. That's what they love. They get a kick out of it. They absolutely love it. That's what you're empowering. Sadists, narcissists, psychopaths. Devil's law or God's law. That's your choice. So, my next point of call here is the, if I can find it, it is the complicity in genocide that our country has moved into that already with Labour, with people like David Lammy and Keir Starmer. So imagine how much worse Nigel Farage would be. So what is the alternative? What is the choice here? What choice do we have? Well, we have this man, Zach Polanski, of the Green Party. And I've joined the Green Party, and I've asked Zach Polanski has asked, and I've asked as well directly through X, the Workers' Party and your party and socialist independent MPs to form a coalition. To form a coalition. Because the threat is that real and that deadly and that dangerous. Because that's what they need to do. You see, the politicians are always asking the people to unite. It is time for the politicians to unite on the side of humanity, on the side of universal law, not some law drafted up in a Tory back room by a set of criminals, actually. But the law that was devised by our forebears, people who survived 2 world wars and said never again, that are our inheritance, that cannot be taxed, and were there to be enshrined forever, for every generation. That is the most we can give to our children. It's worth more than all the money in the world. They can't be bought, they can't be sold. Your human rights. And it's about time that we supported them, to reinforce them. Because to those who have, more shall be forgiven, and more shall be given, and to those who have not, even that which they have will be taken away. So if you have no rights, if the British people aren't benefiting from our human rights, but immigrants are, and asylum seekers are, because they're protected by international law, and international lawyers will come along and hold Britain to account if it abuses their human rights. And it is doing, by placing immigrants in hotels in British towns and cities. People, asylum seekers, we know nothing about them. They're not like refugees who apply in their own country and get invited to Britain. We don't know anything about them. You keep them in humane detention centres and process them, and then they can live in British communities, in their own flats, not all crammed into a hotel. And half of these hotels you see in Britain, they were standing empty because, the British economy has crashed that bad. Nobody's using them. And so, the government, we just pay them to let all the asylum seekers go and stay in there. And that puts them at risk then from the local community as well. And then if one of them's committed a crime, raped somebody, that means that everybody in that hotel is now considered a rapist. Collective judgment. It is collective punishment that the people, that is against the law. That's against human rights. Just because one person of a group commits a crime, it doesn't mean that they're all criminals. They're all different people from all over the world. It's not like they're the one huge family that train the kids to rape people. These type of risks should never have happened in the first place, but they're allowed to happen because they were feeding the wolf, weren't they? They were feeding the fascist. Social engineering, that's how it's done. Get educated, people, and wise up, because we are being manipulated. And we're being manipulated to literally vote away our children's rights. So I'm going to leave you with Zach Polanski. Let's make hope normal again, because hope is quite abnormal at the moment, isn't it? Somebody who will stand up for our human rights. We need to give him a chance. Because I look at him, I mean, yeah, he's a politician. He could be a liar like so many other politicians are. But I think we're better to take a chance on Zach Polanski, a vegan who grew up in a Zionist household and rejected it, who understands exactly the dangers. Or we vote for the latest Zionist rent boy, Nigel Farage. So I'll just leave you with this video now. I'm going to play it. I wish everybody, I wish everybody all the best. I don't care what your politics are. I love your children as much as I love my own children and everybody's children. And that is my main concern. And one last thing. Remember, our children have been judged minor human beings. It's an antiquated judgment against our children as insignificant and unimportant. Nigel Farage can come along and remove human rights without thinking about how that will impact children, because children are just a minor concern. Just as Keir Starmer and David Cameron and all before him can come and implement austerity as an economic policy without thinking about how it will impact children, because they're a minor concern. And it is high time that we evolved now into higher consciousness and understand that our children, they're not minor. They're MIPs, most important people. Okay? Most important persons. Because they are developing human beings and they are our future. And it's about time that we started investing in them. And when it comes to, the Zionists and the evangelists that are supporting them, following Revelations, we've got to fulfill Revelations. We need to think about the people of Nineveh and Jonah. Jonah, who did not want to deliver this evil prophecy to the people of Nineveh, who were living beyond the law, who had abandoned the law. And they were told how bad life was going to be because they were living so wickedly. And they begged and pleaded and said, please God, no. Please forgive us, we're going to change. And they changed. And Jonah was very unhappy that God hadn't, this prophecy hadn't come true. He said, you forced me to give that prophecy. And God said, well, it didn't need to happen, did it? Because they changed. So they were forgiven. You see, prophecies aren't there to be fulfilled. We have a choice. And my choice is Isaiah's. Hold the hand of the little child. Let a child's needs be our lead and guide us. And I think with Zach Polanski and the Green Party, they are promising a child's needs, aren't they? A cleaner environment, a kinder, fairer society, a more balanced society. A society that even the people that want to vote for Farage will actually enjoy. Because we need to lose our hate and start living like human beings and enjoying our full human rights and demanding no more homeless people on the streets. It's all right pointing your fingers at the boat people who you think are responsible for the homeless on the streets, but why aren't you looking at yourselves and thinking, well, why haven't we got together and got lawyers and gone to Strasbourg because this country isn't honouring our human rights? Why are the people homeless on the streets? Why aren't they in the hotels? And why aren't the migrants in a detention centre? That's the way to think. Not, oh yes, let's scrap human rights to stop the boat people. I'm sorry, that is ridiculous and stupid, and it's bloody dangerous. So here's the antidote.
I grew up in the north, not far from here. I remember I used to wake up with this hopeful feeling, not like I was in a cornflakes advert or anything, But there was something in the air back then, a kind of ordinary hope. I've spent the last 5 years up and down the country, listening to people on streets like this. I'm not sure we feel like that anymore. There's more a hopelessness. People who are too tired to fight, too tired to sleep, kids going to bed hungry, parents lying awake in the next room knowing, powerless to change things. And people say to me, "Hey Zach, you're the leader of a political party, what are you lot going to do about this?" And I say, we need a fair taxation system. We need to tax the people with the broadest shoulders in a fair way. But they cut me off. Hey, I'm a plumber. I've been working 30 years. I'm finally doing okay. Why are you making me the problem? Or a hairdresser. I've just opened my first hair salon. Why are you taxing me? Why are you taxing my ambition? And I wondered, why did they think I was talking about them? And now I get it. It's because it's too hard to picture. You see, there are some people in this country, when they go to sleep at night, they lay their heads on the pillows, just like us. They lie in the same darkness we do. But when they sleep, something happens. It's like the economy does a little dance for them. And when they wake up, without working a third job or doing an extra shift, they are richer, much richer. In one night's sleep, they make more than the plumber and the hairdresser could earn in an entire year. More than this whole street earns in an entire year. More than this whole beautiful neighborhood could earn in an entire year. In one night's sleep without lifting a finger. That's why it's so difficult to imagine. It's obscene. That's why we need a wealth tax. Not on plumbers, not on small businesses, not on ambition. Just a 1% tax on the assets of the super rich will help reduce inequality, give us warmer homes, an NHS that works, free and universal childcare and air our kids can breathe. And by the way, if anyone tries to say to you, won't the super rich just leave? A more equal society, it's good for them too. Since the pandemic began, billionaire wealth in this country has doubled. Meanwhile, millions use food banks and warm banks as a lifeline. Some politicians seem confused. Do they serve the billionaires or do they serve you? I'm not confused. Ordinary people can't wait any longer. I'm here to make this call, but I can't do it alone. Will you stand with me? Let's bring back that feeling and make hope normal again.
So let's do it. And just remember, there's one other thing as well. I mean, Donald Trump is at the moment building basically factory prisons. He intends to gather all the homeless people up and put them to work in these factory prisons. And, you know, the same will very likely be coming to Britain under reform, where there will be no social security. There'll be no NHS. If you've got no money, you've got no rights. No rights to healthcare, no rights to a home. You'll go to the workhouse. It doesn't matter how disabled you are, how sick you are. You'll do whatever you can do. And you'll live in a factory prison. You know, these are the dangers. We need to think way outside the boxes of normality that we've been led to believe in, and understand that the devil is at our door and God is waiting to come in. Who do we let in? The devil or God? And who's God except the light within ourselves, the light of life that this universe gave to us, and the human rights that God's law supports. So, love and God bless to everybody. And please, think very carefully about who you're going to vote for in the next general election.